My career, my dreams as a young person about my future were not about doing journalism per se. They were about working for an interesting publication, most likely in publishing, and maybe in the New York Times. But I guess that's journalism, huh? But I heard sad stories about the Times in early days. A wonderful correspondent we had came to us from CBS, Daniel Shore, wanted to work at the New York Times and was told, no, we have our Jew. So those were the days of, they weren't hiring women, they weren't hiring Jews. This was the 1950s. And, you know, there were a whole lot of wants. But women of that generation had very narrow expectations. We could get married, we should get married. We should have children. And we should stay home, take care of the children, bake the perfect cakes, all of that. Only a few of the things in there, in that long list, were of interest to me at all. My husband was in worked at the State Department in the Foreign Aid Agency. And so we lived in India for almost 3 years. We came home in that extraordinary year, 1968. And I looked around and I felt this country's having a nervous breakdown. It's so broken and so hysterical. And I caught some of that. You couldn't help it in that atmosphere. So I would say that was the background against which not only feminism, but NPR was being created.
This is All Things Considered.
We went on the air for the first time with All Things Considered in 1971. I was the first woman to anchor a nightly news and public affairs broadcast on radio. There were no role models for me because there was nobody to imitate. They were all male. And in the beginning, I tried to imitate them because that's all there was. So I lowered my voice. I spoke as ridiculous as I could. And I sounded ridiculous. I eased up a little bit. And a fellow named Bill Seymour said magic words to me. He was in charge. He was our operations manager, and he invented the notion of All Things Considered. And he chose me in order to be the anchor of it. And he said to me, after too much time doing this, be yourself. Those were two of the most valuable words. It's like Mr. Rogers. Nobody else says that to you, right? We like you just the way you are. No, they say comb your hair, go on a diet, don't wear green, you know, all of those things. But he said that. And it was extraordinary. It was like opening a magic door for me. And I could relax and speak on the radio just as I'm speaking to you. We thrived in it because it was so new and you could do anything that you wanted to. And it was so exciting to be able to be that creative and be able to think this is a brand new thing. It's different from anything. It's different from television. It's different from radio. There was almost no news on radio unless it was 15-minute newscasts. But here we had this, we pounced on it like a new toy. You know, we had this new funny medium, just more fun than I'd ever had. Partly because radio was the medium of my childhood. We didn't have a television until I was in junior high school. But radio, the Bakelite Emerson radio that sat on the kitchen table until my happiest days when I got a cold and my mother moved it into the bedroom on the table next to my bed. And both of us sat there listening to the soap operas, which were so corny and terrific with organ music, you know, and some of them had full orchestras playing, very dramatic and very good. And we both loved that and sat and listened to them. And that was the medium for me. And I'll do anything to get people, well, almost anything, to get people to listen, to make something surprising or unexpected or unusual in the beginning of a story, just to make it happen. One time I was going to interview Helen Hayes, who was just a major American actor for many, many years on stage and screen. But I went to see her and I thought, what can I make happen here that's unexpected and that will intrigue listeners? And she had done a memoir, and I read it. And I discovered in it that her favorite thing was M&M candies. So I brought a bag of them, 2 bags of them with me, and started the tape recorder running and handed them to her. And she knew just what to do. The great actor. She said, "Oh, my beloved M&Ms." I still say tape. Most of us do who are of an age, we know it's all digital, but to me, it's tape that goes around in circles. I learned radio at that American University station, WAMU. I was an English major in college, and I walked in there and thought, what am I doing here? I saw all these wires and buttons and faders and things. I thought, I'm in the wrong place. But a fellow there named George Giese, who was the manager of the station, taught me about it, and other men on the staff, David Eccleston, Mike Harris, and I would ask them, the innocent, ignorant questions. And of course, they were delighted to tell it to me. I was the only outside, non-university person on the staff. All the rest of it started as a student station. It went only into the dormitories on the campus. But George Giese, who was an engineer as well as the manager and had a great radio voice as well, he was the one who first of all, he used to say to me, a few introduction to broadcasting classes wouldn't hurt you a bit, Susan. And he's right. He's still right. I never had them. It was on the job training. I watched what others did, and I brought it to the microphones. And that was great fun. I mean, these were great lessons. I have to say, although I'm still kind of a bristling feminist, I never got a job that wasn't given to me by a man. So I'm not one of those guy haters, I'm grateful to those men who were, I didn't realize how brave it was for them to be doing that, but they did it. And that made all the difference too. That opened so many doors for me. And then once in, you reach out to other women and say, come on in. I must have been wearing blinders because I never was the victim either of harassment or sort of predatory behavior. As I said, all my jobs came to me because of men, but they never invaded my privacy. So I can't answer that. I'm sure when it was going around, I just didn't notice. I was always older than everybody else on the staff, and that had a lot to do with it. But I was the only parent in the earliest days, and they were all young and full of beans, the rest of the staff. So there may have been some mufti-pufti, but I never experienced it. A real point about the presence of women there is that we were inexpensive, and so that they could, in the beginning, they could hire us. They got their money's worth from us, and any woman who took a part-time job, it was known that we would work full-time. No matter what the hours were, they would get full-time work out of us because we were so thrilled to be out of the house. And we were thrilled to be doing what we were doing. And we wanted to do it as well as we possibly could. I must say that I have, in and out of that, especially in my early days, had that feeling that I'm a hoax. I'm pulling something over on people. I'm really not qualified for this job. And I learned, I went to an all-women's college, Barnard College in Manhattan, that was a very common reaction that we women have. And there was utterly no reason to have it. Get rid of it, because it's only going to hold you back. You can do anything that anybody else can do. And you can do a whole lot of things that they can't do. So go for it. But it took a number of years to do that, to feel that there was something bogus in what we were doing, that we weren't qualified. Something very comforting I heard once. I heard Barbara Walters say, after many years of being on the air, she said, I finally have stopped auditioning. And I thought, bingo, I absolutely not understand what she's saying. And I'm not quite there, but it's great that she has found that. I got walked out on by several people I was interviewing, and I guess the most dramatic was David Crosby of the singing group Crosby, Stills, and Nash. He'd written a memoir, and he had long chapters in it about his drug addictions and going to jail as a result of them. He was in New York. I was in Washington. But it sounds, the interconnection makes it sound as if we're sitting in the same room. And so I couldn't see him. We were just talking. And I got to a question which was suggested to me because I didn't know him. I was a Gershwin girl, and I loved Irving Berlin and all the great American songbook from the old days. So I didn't really know Crosby, Still, and Nash. And I went to my pal and co-host, Noah Adams, and said, well, I'm interviewing you. What should I ask? And Noah had some wonderful ideas. But the one that tripped me up, I guess, or at least tripped up David Crosby, was you look so great at a concert. You're so glamorous. You've got spangles and you all these lights on you, and you're up there on this stage and you're performing and you're writing about how you needed the drugs in order to be able to do that. So you made the drugs look very, very exciting, very glamorous. And then there was a long silence. I heard it sort of like that, and a silence. And Manoli Wetherill, the engineer in the New York studio, said to me, Susan, he got up and walked out. And I thought, that is really strange. He'd written about it in his book. I wasn't exposing him at all. He'd exposed himself. And there he went, boom. So that was a big lesson to me. It didn't happen a lot. Terry Gross, who's one of the great NPR broadcasters, told me a story about interviewing Monica Lewinsky. She was an intern at the White House and had a little walk around with President Clinton. And Terry started to ask her about that. And Monica Lewinsky got up and walked out. And I said, did you keep recording, Terry? She said, no, we didn't. I said, oh, that's a mistake. You needed to keep running the tape and broadcasting and explaining to your listeners, which is something I never did with Crosby. Explain to your listeners what she did and what the reaction was. What you've done is sanitized reality, and you've avoided a glimpse of character that would be really interesting to your listeners. I think I regretted not just quickly enough becoming myself, what he suggested. I still was very formal.
I'm Susan Stamberg.
And kind of uptight. But his idea was talk as if you're talking over the fence to a neighbor. That's the sound that he wanted. And it took me a while to get that. I listened to some early tapes, and I hear myself being much more formal than I am now with you. But I learned to do it, and it became the sound of public radio. He, in his wise head, heard me doing that. He heard my voice, and he liked it. And he felt I could set the tone for what he wanted for this first program that we ever did, which was All Things Considered. Every working woman will tell you that she has regrets about not spending enough time with her son, or not enough time with her husband, or moving too often, moving the job to the front burner and not paying enough attention behind. It's inevitable, especially when they're tough jobs and they're jobs with a lot of tension and a lot of demand. You just do it. Essentially, you write in haiku because you have to breathe. That's the great challenge of radio. You can't write long sentences. And first of all, a listener can't sit and listen to an extremely long, only through the ear, an extremely long sentence. Second of all, you can't get through it without needing to breathe someplace. So shorter. This was OJT, on-the-job training, and making it up all the time. And that was one of the things I made up. Well, I learned 11 years after I'd started that from this self-same Bill Senior. He was very, very important in all of our lives. But I learned from him that when I went on the air as an anchor, there was quite a lot of resistance and protest from the member stations, managers of the member stations. A woman's voice is not authoritative. People will not take her seriously. She won't make her mark in this. It's not going to work. And to his credit, God bless him, he never told me that till 11 years had passed. I think he knew, that it would affect me in some way, would make me change my style. And he was perfectly happy with what I was doing.
As it happened, I hired quite a few women because they were the best candidates for the job. This included Susan Stamberg. She just exuded curiosity. Her voice is rich with tone color. Not all reporters make good hosts. At the same time, she wanted to only work part-time because she had a young son. However, the next year, on March 1st, 1972, Susan became the first woman to host a national news program, and she continues to produce pieces at age 82.
Over time, people just get so used to what you're presenting to them, what they're hearing. And they may be objecting at first, but after a while, it becomes kind of a comfort zone that they go to. People didn't hate the press the way they do now. Big chunks of it, mistrust, or think about fake news, or feel uneasy about it. They don't realize the service that we perform in a democracy. Well, my husband was just extraordinarily supportive to me all of his life. And Josh had a wonderful time coming into the studio with me, sitting on my lap while I broadcast. And, he wanted to play with I knew he was little. He wanted to play with the microphone. I had to keep pushing him back, pulling him back, and all of that. But he's became an actor. So I guess he's getting his chance these days in order to be heard. Lou was never interested in that, although I married him in large part for his beautiful voice. My husband had just a wonderful, mellow, gentle, sweet. He had an NPR voice, and he was a wonderful listener as well. So but if I had to go, if I had to leave, I'm sure that there was some resentment at times. There had to have been, or some sadness, or some jealousy. We all were doing that together. And it was more in the books I was reading, Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan, than other people, because they were my generation. And so we were not pioneers, particularly in that. So, but it was by what I was reading and how I was thinking. And also how I saw at NPR how women were treated, sometimes just for the wrong reasons. That is, we had very low salaries. The men's salaries were always higher. Over the years, there were demonstration protests about that. And I think there was the New York Times women were the ones who brought a lawsuit against the Times to get equal pay. But we came along shortly after that, and we inherited their success with it. But it didn't happen overnight, of course. There's no question that in my time, half a century at NPR, I think there have been giant steps for womankind. First of all, look how many of us are anchors on television and TV news programs, certainly on the radio. I haven't done the numbers, but I think every one of our major strip programs has at least one, and usually more, women as anchors now. Our salaries are better over the years. It became justice to raise salaries and make them on a par with those of men doing the same job. And with our member stations, many women are the station managers. The work that I have done in journalism, has absolutely changed my life. It's shown me the world, and also what it did for me was explode me from this narrow little Upper West Side woman. Interestingly, journalists are supposed to be skeptical. One of the jokes is your mother says she loves you, check it out. Believe nothing and always go and find it, dig deeper. I've never gotten it. It's not that I'm totally innocent, but I've gotten in the years a kind of skepticism and a kind of resistance or raising of questions that I might not have raised before. I have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Oh, Lord. It's embedded in the pavement. It's a long street, Hollywood Boulevard, I'm right next to Ed Asner. I tell myself, and I believe it's true, nobody cares about art. And it's my job to make them care. So I think about how I'm going to start this, what I'm going to do at the beginning to grab them, and then pull them along with me. So get as dramatic as I possibly can. It's just so hard now because I don't know where the jobs are. 10 years ago, I would have said, come on in. It's a wonderful field. We're working to save democracy. We're doing that every single day. I can't think of a greater mission to have than to save democracy. That's what the president keeps saying too. Really, it's a form of government that I lived in India for some years, which is also, it's the world's largest democracy still, and came to realize how extraordinary our system is and how fragile it can. And we're learning now how fragile it can be. But I believe deeply, and I say it to my son and to my granddaughters, in its flexibility and its lasting value. And no matter who's looking at it or covering it or writing about it, that's going to come through by the good reporters, the ones who take care and know what they're talking about. I hope,
We don't have anything in the first segment.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding you.
Hello, EDR. Get a tape rolling right now.
In the break, 110.